So yeah, I got this ethical question. Like my office right now, the office floor is a total mess and it needs to be vacuumed. But the carpet is getting replaced on Tuesday. Should I should I vacuum it today? And
Absolutely not. Why would you vacuum carpet that's getting ripped out on Tuesday?
because it looks
It's a fucking
terrible.
waste of time, Dan.
It looks
This is
terrible.
not the equivalent of cleaning before the housekeeper comes.
Okay.
Pick
So
up
it's
your shit.
okay.
Anything you don't want the carpet people to remove, like I don't know,
Right.
if you have a USB drive laying around on the floor
Sure. Sure.
somewhere,
There's not no
doing
link in
some
the show notes to
presentation,
our
like pick
previous
that shit
discussion.
up. But don't.
It's probably not a link in the show notes about that, but yeah. No, you're right. I see what you're saying. I know, but I'm looking down here. It's hard to be in this space right now because there's there's crumbs on the floor.
Well,
I I was eating in here and there are crumbs on the floor and it's troubling me. I
take
appreciate
your
your helping
keyboard
me.
and
But
shake it out a little over the carpet
oh, this is the
before they
perfect
go.
time to
It's
like,
the perfect time to empty the crumbs out of
you
your
know, and the
keyboard.
great thing is I live in, we live in Minnesota and we normally Minnesotans don't normally wear their shoes in the house, which was really weird for me when I moved here from the South. And I just feel like entirely justified in wearing my shoes all over my carpeting now.
Oh, like grind it in and
Yeah.
get a little bit of
Yeah, I might even
outsider over
invite the
the
kids
carpet.
to like spray paint or something, or like this is the time to do art projects like right on the fucking
Mm,
floor, like right there.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that idea. I
I
thank
mean,
you.
it's a lived-in space. You're supposed to live there,
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
what are
But
they? I don't think they're going to
Till
expect it to be
Tuesday.
cleaned carpet when they're going to
Until
no, they're
remove
not.
it.
Tuesday.
So
And then
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
don't do anything to the carpet.
All
Don't
right.
breathe on it.
I
You can't get it dirty. It's got to
I
last us
no,
another
you're
20
right.
years.
I appreciate your assistance with this moral conundrum. Michael, do you have something for us now?
I do. And if anyone's like, "What? What is going on?" Yeah, we just kind of started rolling this morning. So thanks for hanging with us.
Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Hey, the newbies out there, if you're not familiar with this podcast, essentially I've gone out and I found a post on the internet where someone has shared a scenario and asked essentially, who's the asshole in this situation? And often they're concerned, is it me? Or can you justify that I am not the asshole? That's sometimes what they're looking for. But anyway, Dan and Gayle are going to weigh in and give us some feedback on that. I've, in general, tried to make them a little more discreet by removing any of the identifiable information. And in general, like they don't know what I'm going to throw at them. I never tell them ahead of time, which is always kind of fun. So, um,
We look forward to it, Michael.
yeah,
Absolutely. Well, I am very glad to be joined today by Dr. Daniel Kessler, who is always worried about being on the right side of ethics and morality. Welcome, Dan Kessler, and soon to be new carpet owner.
I and I do care about the moral and ethics of our world. That is
You
absolutely
do.
true, including my own actions, which
Yeah, right.
oh, you know what? We should talk about moral injury sometime.
Oh, what a great idea. Well, by the time this
Yeah.
is aired,
By
we've
the
already
time
done
this
it.
is aired, we will have already given our talk on moral injury. And but but we're looking forward to talking about that, and we'll be bringing the topic up from time to time. Thanks so much, Gail, for the introduction. I love this time we spend with I get to spend with the doctors McBride. We don't often call Mr. Dr. McBride Dr. McBride, but he also possesses a doctoral level degree, albeit not in psychology, but in words.
Which
it's
is
true.
why
If you
he's
need a
such a natural
prescription of books,
choice to help us with this.
Right. So he is the ideal person because of his curiosity.
Mhm.
And thank you so much for bringing us a new conundrum, Michael. What do you have for us?
yes, I have some words for you. So the the topic today is am I, and I think this is one we can all relate to. I definitely feel this one deeply. So I'm really interested to see what you guys come up with.
Come on.
But anyway, the topic is, am I the asshole for not bringing anything to my friend's potluck after she told me not to?
This one seems self-evident.
Oh,
It's in the fucking title.
I
but
know,
as
but
we have found, the titles can be misleading. I
Yeah.
think we need to hear more. Unless you're in Minnesota, then yes,
Right.
you always bring something, regardless. Even if they tell you not to. But please, Michael,
But
give us
if you're in Minnesota, something a tip to those that here are not from Minnesota, if you're coming to a Minnesota held potluck that starts at 6 p.m., you are expected to arrive at 6 p.m.
This is true.
This is very different from those of you who may be listening in states where that would be considered inappropriate by my home state of Maryland, my home states of Maryland and Virginia. If the potluck is at 6, you're going to roll in between 6:15 and 6:30. Here in Minnesota, people will literally send you apology texts. Sorry, running 10 minutes late.
5 minutes even. Yes.
Yeah, for your 6 o'clock potluck. It's such a bizarre thing. I was late to everything when I first moved here 20 years ago, and
Now you're only late to 50% of things.
About the 50%. Now, yeah, absolutely, still late to 50% of things, but
occasionally you're hella early, and you'll send an apology text for being hella early, but we're on our way and we'll be there.
I will do that. But if I'm told not to bring something, though, all right, Michael, tell us the story, because I want to answer this, but we don't have the actual story. So please tell us.
Unfortunately, I don't know which state this takes place in. That would be helpful.
That would be helpful.
But,
wouldn't that be helpful?
Wouldn't that be
helpful?
It would be. I'll see if I can chase it down in the comments, maybe. But this is what the post says. The poster is early 30s female, and she says, I was invited to a potluck hosted by my friend who explicitly told me not to bring anything. She mentioned that there would be plenty of food and that my presence was all that mattered. Trusting her words, I arrived empty-handed. However, during the event, I noticed that everyone else had brought a dish, and some guests gave me puzzled looks when they realized I hadn't contributed anything.
It's better than puzzled licks, by the way.
I know, that was I was going to let that one go, but
Why'd you have to say I was a doctor of words? Now I feel like an asshole.
You're Michael, you're not a doctor of pronunciation. You're a doctor of reading of words.
Reading of words. All right.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Michael.
Okay,
I should let you finish reading the words.
So the poster felt embarrassed and out of place. After the party, she received messages from mutual friends expressing their surprise that I didn't bring anything, which anyway, so I'll save my commentary for then.
Save your commentary.
I explained that the host had told me not to, but they seemed skeptical. Now I'm questioning whether I should have brought something anyway, despite her instructions. Am I the asshole for taking her at her word and not bringing a dish to the potluck?
So I think Dan,
Yeah.
do you have thoughts? Like I'm really stuck on the word potluck.
Yeah,
It's a potluck, right?
I'm puzzled by this entire thing, and again, invoking our standard line here, where's the conversation that should have taken place around this during the actual potluck? Like sending her emails afterwards. Why didn't you bring anything? If I go to a potluck and I brought something and someone didn't bring something, my assumption is going to be something went on for them.
Yeah,
They were
right.
told not to. Sometimes life catches. I've had potlucks where it's like, oh shit, we have to be there. Like let's do we stop off at the store and buy something, and then what are we gonna do? And because we don't. And sometimes life catches up with us, and I'm gonna follow John and Julie Gottman's advice on this and assume that there was some good reason that she forgot. So I'm a little annoyed with her friends. I'm not judging her yet, but I'm a bit annoyed with her friends for reaching out to her and saying, why didn't you bring anything?
So you're going after the minor third characters here.
Yes, I'm going after. They're
the party goers.
I'm not even calling them minor third characters. Third party characters. They are the people who caused her the distress.
Okay, but the post is,
yes,
in my reading, is about the host of the potluck and the OP attending the potluck. So I'm thinking about the friends who are other friends who are in attendance at the potluck as those minor third characters. Maybe they're not so minor. Maybe
okay, fine. We won't quibble over that. Either way, I'm a little annoyed with them.
I'm annoyed with them as well.
Yes.
Because
why not?
I
why
would
even
like to have the fucking conversation and have it compassionately. Hey, everything okay? I noticed you didn't bring something. Something must have happened.
Or shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Why are you dissing this person who didn't bring anything?
I'm also very annoyed with the host or hostess here. Why are you telling someone to not bring something? It's a fucking potluck. By the very definition, the meal is whatever you bring. That means your guests bring something, even if it's small. Dude, we used to do potluck lunches way back in the day when I worked in a hospital setting. We did potluck lunches, and there was this guy
Mhm.
He was the one dude really on the team, the
Yeah.
only guy on a team of women. So like women can whip up a potluck like nobody's business.
Hey,
I don't
I,
know, let me finish.
if I,
Not all men,
uh,
but
oh, all right, all right,
women in general, especially women in healthcare tend to really be like caretakers and will whip up a potluck in a hot minute. Just leave that stand.
all right.
The dude on the team also understood he needed to participate. And
Mhm.
so we'll call him Steve, because that was his name.
Right. That was his
Steve
name. Was that
was
we're gonna call him Steve, which is his actual name. And
his
by the
actual
way,
name.
for those of you who are listening and wondering, there is no PHI here. There's no
There's no
HIPAA
PHI. He's a
requirement that
colleague.
you
This
not
is
disclose
not,
the name of someone in your life who is
no.
not a patient or a
No,
client. So
right.
there you
I
go.
get
So
I
we
get
can
the
call
full
him
name.
Steve, which is not his name. Wink, nudge.
It is his name. I'm gonna totally call it out. Steve, if you're
All right.
listening, I am so grateful that you're listening, and I hope you're still hitting, well, okay, golf balls into the curtains, whatever. Um, that's a totally different story.
Yeah.
But he would participate. And you could always count on Steve to bring a box of Oreos or a carton of Oreos and a gallon of milk. He did zero preparation other than swinging through the value foods or whatever it was in town,
Love it.
picking up a gallon of milk and a carton of Oreos, and you knew there would be milk and Oreos at the potluck.
I respect
It's
that person who
potluck.
I
Bring
respect the person.
something.
I have no problem with the person who stops the potluck. Everyone's saying, you go to potluck and there's a box of chicken.
It's fine.
Someone
Totally.
has stopped off at the local grocery and picked up a
I
box
don't
of fried
care. I
chicken
don't
and
care.
brought it with them.
But nobody said
That's
to
fine.
Steve, "Hey man, we know you're not going to cook, or you play your dude card all the time." Like, no, 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 no. Don't worry about it. No one told Steve. No one gave Steve a pass. Steve was still expected to bring something, and he brought Oreos and milk
even if
every
he
time. Why are you excusing this person? And I hope there's a really good reason this person was excused. But
um
you're not really participating in the potluck. You're coming along
I'm
and eating.
well,
Nothing
but
wrong.
here's what I'm why I am. If I notice that someone hasn't brought something to a potluck,
Oh,
unless they're
issue.
unless they are an asshole, and we know they're an asshole. The reason they didn't bring something to the potluck is almost every single time going to be something that got in the way. They were told not
Absolutely.
to. They had a really terrible day. Something is going on in their world that interfered with them bringing something.
I
And
agree
I'm
with
just
you.
gonna.
I'm not saying I'm annoyed with the OP for not
Oh,
bringing something. I'm
okay.
annoyed at the host or hostess for like saying you don't need to. The host or hostess set this person up to say, look, it's a potluck. By definition, everyone else is bringing something, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Here's
And
what
it
I keep
created a
thinking about.
scenario. Like, no, I'm not
Yeah,
annoyed with the poster. I'm
it
annoyed
is
with
a
the host.
weird. It is a weird scenario. I keep thinking about a friend of my mother's, who I'm not going to mention here, on the freakishly off chance one of her offspring is listening. She is of blessed memory now, this particular individual, who could not cook. And we would go over to her house for dinner once or twice a year, and she could not cook her way out of a wet paper bag.
Wet paper
And
bag.
yeah, it
Dry one
was
would be easier.
no, exactly. That's my point. She could not cook her way out of a wet paper. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. No, she
Yeah,
was just she
I get what you mean.
yeah, she was and you'd always like, oh,
Hmm.
like you have to plan ahead for like how am I gonna get, like, maybe OP is just a really terrible cook.
Fine, but it's still like, hey, save yourself the trouble. Don't make something. Feel free to
Yeah,
swing by the store and pick up that bucket of chicken
yeah,
or
exactly.
buy from
I
the
don't under
pantry.
Yeah,
There is a solution that's very easy here.
I don't yeah. So here's the
No.
like almost like I'm troubled by the host telling her not to bring something when
Yes.
everyone else is bringing something. I'm troubled by anyone who emailed her and said, why didn't you bring something?
Oh, right.
I'm really troubled by them. I'm
Agreed.
okay with OP.
I'm okay with
Like,
OP.
she
OP
did what
followed instructions.
she followed instructions. She
She
followed
questioned
instructions.
the instructions.
Yeah, exactly. I have no trouble
Fair.
with her, and I feel badly for her
I
because
really do.
her friend unwittingly, probably, I'm not willing to call her friend, the host, an asshole, because she probably like didn't realize the implications of what would happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
But she was at the very least like not getting it, and
Yeah.
I'm really annoyed with the friends for calling her out. Like,
Yeah,
let's just make
we
it positive.
massage the fact pattern a little bit, and the
Go
host
ahead.
says, like, okay, I know my friend who is in between jobs and really, stretching that grocery budget kind of thin. I'll make sure that she doesn't have to bring anything, doesn't, thinks she's doing a favor and being generous, but doesn't, like you said, sort of unwittingly puts her friend in
Yeah,
a
but
really awkward position of showing up without something.
I don't.
And,
I'm
and
going to
I,
say that's. I'm going to be more annoyed if she did that because like that has a feel of condescension or paternalism that I'm not
hmm.
happy. Like, let her bring something that she can afford to bring. I can pull something together. If I had to pull something together for a potluck, I could pull something together for under $2. That would be
You
potluck
are
worthy.
really good at, I think, thinking budget conscious around food, but I don't
Sure.
know that that is a skill that everyone has really mastered. I think
All
there,
right. All right.
and
All
you
right.
you
I
and I
still.
both cook at home a lot, and there is this, I think, perception out there that food is expensive, and we
Sure.
as Americans really rely on prepackaged things. And you and I don't do that, but I don't think
No.
that's a
But I'm
perspective
still annoyed
shared
if
by all.
if our host did say, "Oh, don't bring anything because you're out of work and can't afford it," like that still kind of bothers me a little bit.
Okay,
You
but
know,
I am suggesting an alternative fact pattern where the hostess thinks that they're doing a favor, and perhaps we're annoyed at the hostess for doing the favor.
yeah.
But I am working to see that because I want to create a generous understanding of why someone would say this. The other
Yeah.
massage pattern of the facts here is, oh my gosh, we have 50 people coming to this potluck, like we have a megaton of food. We don't need more food, right? Because there's always
Fair.
leftover.
Yeah.
And I think that's also problematic because I think then, like you said, everyone else has brought food, and now I'm in this really distinctly small
Yeah.
minority, even if it's really true that we have enough to feed three armies.
Yeah. The whole thing is not.
It is problematic.
It's problematic, and I do I want to. I probably should follow my own feedback and assume positive intent on the part of the host here that she was just trying to be helpful in some positive way. I'm mildly annoyed with her. I'm really annoyed with the other people who emailed, and I feel awful for this person who
Yeah.
thought they were doing what their friend told them to do and got like. I'm hoping that Michael will have for us some fact pattern, some response from OP that sheds a little more light on why the host didn't do that. Michael, is there anything in there about that?
Not exactly, but I did want to bring up something that came up in the conversations online that were kind of
Please.
interesting that I think might get to some of um, the problems you guys have with the people who asked, like, "Hey, why didn't you bring something?" like that kind of thing. And I think so. One of the conversations that was compelling to me was they were talking about people who show up to parties dressed differently than everybody else. So like it's a formal gathering and you show up in blue jeans and a t-shirt or something, and they're like, you're gonna eyeball those people and always wonder, but for the most part, people don't come out and ask. So in some way, like the people actually saying, "Hey, what happened with that?" is kind of an unusual thing, instead of just like keeping it to themselves and having that snark in the back of their mind and making
Yeah.
it their own story or whatever. And I realize like bringing food to potluck is not the same as how you dress when you go to a party. But
There's an overlap there, though. I'll allow it.
but I was kind of curious, like what you guys think about like those kind of disconnects. Like if we forget about the food piece, like just think about like the different dynamics that can happen in gatherings and how people behave there. I mean, judgment is kind of thrown around, I think, based on all kinds of things.
First off, we judge people all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone judges everyone. Period. That's it. We all and people
Well, it
always,
makes
oh,
sense
I'm
to
afraid you're
work.
going to judge. Yes,
Yeah.
we are always judging ourselves. We're judging other people. They're judging us. Hopefully, we're judging kindly and respectfully, but we are making judgments. It's part of human nature to look at a situation and try to understand it, and that's what a judgment is. Hopefully, and maybe I've been living in Minnesota too long, and I go and I like, hopefully you make these judgments if they're negative silently and don't share them in an unkind way. But do I ever make a judgment about why someone chose to wear this or bring that? Absolutely. I will. Do I try to come up with why? Yes. Am I going to reach out to them and like, oh, why were you wearing that Borat mankini? Okay, that I probably would ask. That I might like. That would be weird. But
Wow, that is quite an image. Thank you for that, Dr. Kessler. I agree. I mean, I tell my clients all the time, they're like, I'm really afraid I'm going to be judged. You're being judged and you
yeah,
are judging. It does not necessarily mean they are negatively judging you or excessively negatively judging you, right? That then tends to spiral in this sort of negative self-talk way and being, in the spotlight. But the reality is someone glances at you at a formal party in your jeans and hopefully goes, okay, they wore jeans today.
yeah,
Or this is how they're most comfortable. That's sometimes the thought I have at a party where everyone else is maybe dressed a little more elevated and someone shows up in jeans is this person's really comfortable in jeans, or
yeah.
maybe they're dress jeans.
Or maybe
We don't spend a lot
or
of
yeah,
time, hopefully, tearing someone else down in our minds.
right. Or maybe looking at them going, oh, I feel kind of bad for them because they didn't realize that this was a fancy dress party and they showed up in jeans. And like, I wanted them to feel better about their choice, Like, like,
Oh, when my kids were little, you said this term fancy dress. One of the children whose mother is not from the US and asked for a fancy dress party. It meant a costume party. But
oh,
the US families didn't get that. And so
didn't get
like kids showed up in their Sunday best and their kid was dressed up as a cartoon character.
Oh,
Being
I feel
clear is
that's
is important.
so,
But you know
that
what?
is
Kudos to those families that put those kids in those adorable little dress up outfits and little bow ties and all of
wonderful. That's wonderful. I mean, but these kind of things are so often misunderstandings, or and,
completely.
and yes, we are always judging other people all the time. We're always being judged all the time. And there's such an opportunity to have offered grace here and just been like, all right, she had good
Like in our
reason.
situation. Oh, that's what that means where you're from. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Cool.
Well, okay,
Like that
now we
was the end
know.
of it.
Yeah, exactly. Huh, isn't that? And it's a great, it's a great story too. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
got
and
told years
we
later.
happen to know ahead of time because it was given a bit more explanation. So I looked up the cartoon character that the party was after. So our child was joining the birthday child in
Sure.
fancy dress.
In fancy dress.
Fancy dress.
That is really funny. That is
So
great.
let me
No,
Yeah.
back to like, I do not think OP is an asshole for not bringing stuff. I don't think host was necessarily an asshole, although it sounds like maybe a bit tone deaf and she didn't get it. The friends, I'm not happy with them. Like,
Michael, what were you
yeah,
gonna
I was going to ask, so along these lines, right? Like, I mean,
add?
this is kind of, it's not really massaging the facts, but it's like thinking about different variations of this, I guess,
Mhm.
massaging. Um, so thinking about that whole conversation about dress, but then it also kind of played into the types of foods that people bring to a potluck, that
Like Oreos and milk.
there probably is a level of judgment on the person who even made deviled eggs versus the person who shows up with Oreos and a gallon of milk. Like, is that pot, is it really, I don't know what those dynamics are in terms of, what you should bring to something and how much time you should spend on it. And if that friend had brought a bag of chips instead of nothing, would there have been the same level of judgment?
No, I think there wouldn't. If that person had stopped by the store and grabbed a bag of chips, the friends would have shut the hell up and
I don't know
left
about
that
that.
person
No.
alone.
These friends, I see I'm annoyed with these friends enough to say they'd probably been like, why'd you just bring a bag of chips? Why didn't you make something?
I mean, maybe, but and
I,
Michael, to your point, yeah, I think people do judge when you bring a bucket of chicken or something, purchased
but
from the store versus home.
fine. Keep the
Fine,
judgment to
but
yourself.
keep the judgment to
Like
yourself.
there's no
And
there.
by definition, it's potluck. What you
Well,
get is what you get. Don't throw a fit.
well, yeah, exactly. And my other thing is here is like, what's the value of, like, I'm thinking about this, what's going through these friends' mind. What's the value of reaching out and saying, hey, why didn't you bring anything?
Hmm.
I mean, I love what you said earlier, Gail. Like, oh, is everything okay with you? Like, is there some something that got in the way for you, like that showing caring at the very least. But just like, why didn't you bring anything? It's a potluck. What's the value of that other than shaming the person?
Right. What are you hoping to get by asking
Right.
the question? And I love this. I read this somewhere, so this is not mine, but I've sort of adopted it pretty eagerly, which is, what would you do with that information once you have it?
I like that.
And if you really stop and think that what you would do with that information is shame that person, then maybe you don't need that information.
Yeah.
If you want to help that person, then ask the question in a different way.
Right. Right. What did the internet say, Michael?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I didn't render my judgment. You're like skipping down the street
I
here.
made my
Sorry.
judgment.
All right, go
I
ahead.
made my judgment.
I didn't make my judgment.
Oh, you
You're being an
didn't?
ass-heel.
Oh.
No, Michael jumped in.
My
and
apologies. What is your judgment, Dr. MacBride?
I actually, as much as I can talk from a generous place from the host, I am actually more annoyed than I think you are with them. And I'm quite annoyed with the friends. I'm going to put the friends at mildly dickish, but I'm going to put the host certainly at Sucksville. Like,
No,
I think that host really sucks.
I think the host made a I'm assuming the host made a well-meaning mistake, and I'm like right on the board. I'm not, the friends aren't mildly dickish. They're
dickish?
acted in an asshole-ish manner.
Ooh.
I don't know they're assholes, but they really I'm kind
Wow,
of,
you're like dialed up on the friends and dialed down.
I'm dialed up on the
relative
friends.
to me.
I'm like
See, as the
I'm
host,
giving
this person had much more control over the situation. They are the one that's orchestrating the day, and they had the responsibility, and they did not use it wisely.
No, but I think they're trying to do the right thing. I think the host
Rhea here. I'm just not.
The host tried to do the right thing, and the friends tried to do the wrong thing.
I don't think the host tried to do the right thing. I think the host was mindless is not quite the right word. But certainly not intentional. And that is their failing, because as you're pulling together a gathering, your responsibility is to think about the whole of the gathering, and being thoughtless in that is potentially harmful. And I think it caused harm in this situation. And so I am actually more annoyed at the host than you are, and annoyed at the friends, but not nearly as much as maybe as you are, just because I think there's plenty of annoyance to kind of go around.
Fair enough. So
we're
we're
going
going
to keep coming back to thinking about the Art of the Gathering book that you've mentioned a number of times about that, and like kind of the rules with hosts and parties. And anyway, but to get Dan now with Gayle's ruling and yours, the internet definitely was in agreement with you that the OP is not the asshole. That the OP really did nothing wrong. She asked, was given information, and operated in good faith in that way. The few people who said you're the asshole, it was a soft you're the asshole, and they were really like, you're going to a party, even if you don't participate in the potluck, you should bring a host guest of some gift of some kind, wine, flowers,
bottle
whatever.
Of wine.
Like showing up to a party where other people are providing nourishment to you, you shouldn't come empty-handed. And I thought that was fair. Interesting.
That's fair criticism.
Okay, so if the host, they're saying if the host said no, don't bring anything, just yourselves, that's fine. Then the thing you bring shifts in focus from providing additional nourishment to the potluck and a host gift instead.
Right. I'm behind that. I could see that, like that seems quite reasonable, because I'm going to someone's house and I know they're making dinner for me. I'm still going to bring them a little something as part of the thing, flowers, a bottle of wine, something like that, to say, hey, thanks for hosting me. I like, okay. The internet moved me a little bit on that. She's still not an asshole for not providing the potluck, but a little something would have been helpful.
And then there was a small contingent that said, everybody sucks here. Your host knows better. You should also have not shown up empty-handed, regardless of what they said. And the friends definitely suck. Everybody really was like, these people who asked you like why you did what you did, like they are the assholes. So they definitely piled on there. But one really interesting thing that came out of this was people asking for information, and unfortunately the OP didn't feed back information. But the question was essentially like, what culture are we talking about here? We're all assuming it's the States, but like, and they brought up this whole conversation about ask culture versus guess culture. And apparently the US and Europe are more ask cultures where you ask for information, where a lot of the Asian countries they pointed to and people said like, yeah, this is part of our culture. You guess and anticipate, but asking is rude. And so they
Sure.
were saying if you asked and the host felt like they were put in this weird position where they couldn't actually say what they wanted in that situation, that you made them uncomfortable and kind of forced their hand in a way that they
I,
if
that
they said something that wasn't accurate.
Yeah, and just I'm just gonna put a plug in here. If you're a potential OP and you want to post something to the internet, don't drop it and run. Answer the clarifying questions that invariably
Yeah.
or get put out there, because you know what? It makes our lives easier
This
in
is
this
about us now,
podcast.
Dan. Does that make us assholes?
It's about me. It's
You know,
about
I
me.
think it shows a genuine curiosity. You know, if you're going to put it out there to the internet and say, "Am I the asshole?" I think there needs to be some level of like, "Okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to clarify this," because if you genuinely want to know that answer,
Yeah,
then you're going to
yeah.
provide that additional information. Otherwise, it does feel like it's a
Was
little bit
that
for likes and clicks and reassurance as
Yeah,
opposed to
no,
true
I
curiosity.
appreciate I do appreciate the cultural context there, that in some cultures asking would be considered inappropriate and therefore would compel the host to say, "Oh no, you don't need to bring anything at all."
Sure.
So yes, so I'll amend my answer to say that is valid only within the culture that I'm most familiar with here in the United States.
Fair enough. Well, thank you both again for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, morality is often shades of gray and not just to bring food or not bring food to a potluck.
Even if it's Oreos and a gallon of milk, guys, bring something.
Yeah.
I like that. The Oreos and the gallon of milk.
It's a good solution.
It is. It is a good solution.
And readily available in most places. So
Yes,
please follow and share Veritas Views on any of the podcast platforms with your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits for the bonus conversation about. Actually, I happen to know what Gail's going to ask Dan today. So I'll
I
see you
came
on
up
the
with
other
something
side of the
too.
credits. Oh my gosh. All right.
Save it for next week.
All right.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing the show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael McBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. McBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
All right, Dan, I have a kind of amusing AITA that's not real serious. So I just want to share it with you because, well, I think your reaction to this will be kind of funny. So it says, in the office, we adopted a cat and we named him Connor. He is officially employed by the company to hunt mice and provide emotional support to the staff. We even provide him with a salary that we use to buy him food and toys. Last month, we hired a new guy. His name is Connor. To avoid confusion, we started calling him Human Connor. Human Connor then suggested we rename the cat Cat Connor and let him just be Connor. But of course, that was ridiculous. Connor was here first and by seniority outranks him in the company's hierarchy. So nope, he remains Human Connor. What's your take?
I don't even know where to start with that. Except I did once employ an office cat myself.
Did you? I did not know this. This is
Yes, I had an office that had mice.
Uh-huh.
And we got a cat. And Given this was an office that was shared between a lawyer and a psychologist, we decided a forensic psychologist's name for the cat was appropriate. So the cat's name was McNaughton.
Oh, nice.
Which, of course, my esteemed colleague Gayle immediately recognizes the McNaughton case.
Yeah, our esteemed host will put a link in the show notes to.
Yeah, put a link in the show notes to the McNaughton. But Mickey was a great little cat, except that she was this 6.5 pound ball of aggressive violence that would absolutely, like, we had no mice, but when left alone, she attacked everything she could, destroying portions of the office. And I actually found, as a psychologist, the cat in the office a bit too distracting.
Yeah.
So McNaughton eventually went home with one of the office staff, and I presumed, this is more than 20 years ago, I presume lived out a happy, healthy life as a wonderful, delightful terror that she was. But we did not at any point hire anyone else named Mickey, as we call McNaughton. So I don't know, but I personally think that's delightful, calling the new Connor human Connor, and I'm fine with it.
Having worked with you for a long time and, been in an office with various staff and trying to keep track of who was who, I thought this was kind of
delightful.
Sort of like, the nurses I bought pickles for.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Let me ask a follow-up question about Mickey.
Go for it.
So the question, and I have a very rudimentary understanding of the McNaughton case, but my understanding is that people can be considered legally insane if they don't comprehend the nature of the wrongfulness of their actions. And so does that mean that maybe Mickey the cat could be considered legally insane because she didn't realize that ripping up everything was wrong?
She lacked capacity.
She's a fucking cat.
It's probably a different standard, Michael.
Yeah. I don't think we can hold cats to human standard based on their expression. But no, she was acting in a way consistent with her nature, for sure. She was a delightful, little cat. Like, she had a torn out piece, like her ear had obviously been torn in a fight, and it healed over. She was a delightful, wonderful, loving cat when she wasn't like destroying things.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune in again next week for a whole nother Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.